Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Linda Findley and I'm here today with Glen Lord to talk to you about the bereavement cruise. What I'm going to be doing is asking Glen a couple of questions about his thoughts and experience with the bereavement cruise. And then I'm going to kind of go back and talk to Glen a little bit more about how he and I began working together and how he landed in this, what I call bereavement world. So I'd like to start by sharing some information about our next bereavement cruise. Our next cruise will be held April 19th to the 26th, 2020. We will be sailing out of the beautiful Royal Caribbean, or on the Royal Caribbean ship, the Harmony of the Seas. We will be departing from Cape Canaveral, Florida on April 19th, 2020 on a 7-night Eastern Caribbean sailing. The Harmony of the Seas is one of the biggest cruise ships in the world. The cruise itself is everything that a 5-star cruise is. We have the best accommodations, food, entertainment, beautiful ports of call, and added to all of this, we have created a special onboard programming just for If you're interested in more information about the next cruise, please visit our website at www.j3hhh. And please remember that our special price cabins do fill up fast. We don't want you to be disappointed if you wait too long to decide to join us. We'd love to welcome you on board our next cruise. Okay, Glen, ready to get started. To begin with, you and I began working together a few years ago. For anyone who doesn't know, Glen and I are the owners and operating partners of Journeys of Hope, Healing, and Health, LLC. We are the co-creators of the Onboard Grief Conference and co-hosts of the Bereavement Cruise. So how are you, Glen? How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I couldn't be more excited to be sharing with everyone what I consider to be just a really wonderful healing experience.
Good, good, terrific. So I have your first question for you. I'm not quite sure when you first heard about the bereavement cruise. I know you and I had some conversations a few years ago about it, but if you had to think back, what was your very first thought when you learned about the bereavement cruise?
You know, my very first thought was I actually love cruising. And by the first time I had heard about it, I was much further along in my grief journey. And I'm kind of a little bit different than some people because I really enjoy being around bereaved people. I think that their openness and their honesty is just amazing. And so to me, I felt like what a wonderful place to be, to just be able to connect with people in that open environment, but not have the pressure of having to be with them all the time either. So that was kind of my first thought.
Okay, very good. I know that we all have expectations when we talk about taking on a new task or a new project. Can you share with us maybe 3 expectations that you had when you decided to come on board, literally come on board, but not only as come on board, but come on board as a partner for our grief conference program creator and as a cruise host?
Well, you know, I've been involved in many different grief conferences, and you know, what I was looking to do is really create really a high quality grief conference. It's really important. You know, I've probably been involved in dozens and dozens of them. And sometimes there always is something that's healing and hopeful to be found in them. But sometimes you kind of have to look a little harder, and the whole experience is just not smooth and easy. And I really wanted, you know, and I know you share this too, was to create an environment where people felt like they could be their own person, grieve their own way, but really have great quality grief information, as well as have the ability to have fun and enjoy themselves at the same time. And that was really, I think, a high expectation of mine. Another expectation of mine is I truly believe that everyone's worst grief is their own grief. Whatever that grief is, that is their worst grief. And so I wanted to create an environment where people of all different types of griefs could be together, whether they're mourning the loss of their child or the loss of their spouse or the loss of their parent or the loss of their best friend, that they can share in that commonality and find a place to find healing and hope and connection, and recognize that there really is a whole world of people out there that care for them, and they can find a place to be in. And I think the final expectation, since you asked for 3, is I also want to have it be an environment where those people who are still newer or earlier on in their grief are given the attention and the reaching out to them that they need, and making sure that they feel like they are included and part of the grief cruise, and not just have it be that the expectation lies on them to find ways to connect, that we create environments and ways to reach out to them so that they can feel connected and part of the group. And those are really, I guess, the 3 main expectations, I would say.
Very good, thank you. So did you have any expectations in regard to your own experience of grief, in the way that we're all coming on this cruise. You yourself, having worked in this bereavement world for so many years, obviously you've come to this world because you've had your loss of your own. Did you have any thoughts about your own grief and how this cruise and being around other people would affect you and your own grief?
Well, always. I mean, I think one of the nature of being, kind of in the grief cruises is you have to be willing to allow yourself to be opened up and allow yourself to share. And that's always a little bit scary, but it's also is really where I find a lot of the growth and reward of grief comes from, is when I can allow that vulnerability to exist. So I wanted to be in that environment where I could both lead and help people, but at the same time allow myself to be vulnerable and open. As you point out, I'm a bereaved individual too, and so I'm there, primarily to help and support others. But by its very nature, I'm getting a lot of help and support out of it also.
Good, beautiful. Was there anything about the cruise that you can share with us that maybe you did not expect?
Well, one of the things I did not expect about the grief cruise is that I didn't expect that there'd actually be so much time to just be. I found that in the mornings there were times when I just sat on my deck and I forgot completely that I was at a grief cruise, and just I had this opportunity to connect with nature. And it's not always about being involved with other people. There's a lot of times to just be and connect really in a beautiful, very different environment. Most of us don't live where we can see the ocean out our front door. Some people do, but most of us don't. And there's a lot of power to just see that whole creation and where we fit in it. And I think that connection with really what God's creation was really something I found to be unexpected, that I hadn't thought as much about. I thought about the people and what the boat was going to have to offer, but not as much about that. And that was really rewarding to me.
Very, very nice. What would you say that your biggest takeaway was from, I'm going to say specifically to the last cruise?
The last cruise, to me, I mean, I think we're starting to get things better and better. It just amazes me how each cruise, that the cruise just so much is becomes more and more of what I'm hoping, where I hope this can go. And I think the biggest takeaway I took away from the last cruise is it's really happening. This is no longer just a dream or a thought. This is really coming together. Last time there was, I don't remember the exact number, give or take about 75 people who were just in this beautiful environment. And yeah, there were their ups and downs, but you know what? Everybody walked away with this just wonderful feeling of hope. And I believe one of the ladies actually said this was the first time she had felt normal in a very long time. And that is true. This is an environment where I think people have that opportunity. And so to me, that's really was the beauty of this last cruise. And I think it even showed me that we can take it to another level, because as great as this was, and it was wonderful, it's kind of like the more perfect things become, how the little blemishes come out. And so now I think we're polishing out the real fine edges, but I think that you can just become even more and more, and I'm excited about it.
Very good. I think we are going in the right direction. As you know, Glenn, there are many, many different theme cruises out there that are created for any special interest that you can think of. As an example, there's music cruises, there's history and world affair cruises, entertainment cruises, lifestyle cruises, and there's also, celebrity hosted cruises. Although our cruise is called the bereavement cruise, or bereavement/grief cruise, what would you say our theme really is?
I think our theme is hope and finding life again. When we're first bereaved, there's so much that we lose. And I think the biggest thing that I found that I lost or struggled with was that it was okay to smile again. It was okay to have fun again. That connecting with my son or with my sister or with my dad was not about the pain, that there was also love to be had. And to be in an environment where that hope and that love is there. So I would really say it's a hope cruise, and it's really a healing cruise. And that's our subline, is journeys of hope, healing, and health. And I think that's really the hope and the healing is really what this cruise really is all about.
Thank you. I think so as well. I'm going to switch gears in just a second here, but I just want to make a comment to you. You know that I run like all kinds of support groups. I've been doing that for many years, and I do a lot of what we call close-ended support groups. And that last session that we have with a group that, I've met with maybe 4, 6, or 8 weeks, I look at the participants' faces and I can tell that they're thinking, what now? And, there is a thing when you're receiving the support when you're grieving, and then you get to a certain point and then it's like, well, what now? And so I've often shared stories about people like yourself, Glenn, who I've met. I consider you a colleague and a friend, and we're in this world because we've had a loss. You had a loss. And I know for you, you might agree with me in saying, the what now is what we're seeing right now, what we've created in this bereavement cruise. But can you just tell us a little bit about your loss and grief story that brought you to what is the what now for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of loss in my life, but I think that the probably the most significant one where it kind of came to a head was with the death of my son back in 1999. He died from complications of a tonsillectomy. And that really took grief from being an external component that I had experienced multiple times before with the death of my grandparents and some friends and things of that nature. But it really put it front and center in my life. And so with that, I came to find my own hope really through involvement with the Compassionate Friends, and then subsequently through starting and developing my own grief program, Walking Through Grief, and the Grief Toolbox. And then, just as life continues on, grief entered my life again. My mom died, and that for me was not a huge grief event. My mom had suffered physically for about 30 years, and it was hard, but in many ways there was a freedom that came with that. Then my sister died, and that knocked me right down again. She was 39 years old and died from her metastatic breast cancer. And literally the night of my sister's funeral, my dad died. He died from, although not diagnosed, he did die from a heart attack that night, and I truly believe he died from a broken heart. It was too much, and it killed him. And through that, I've had a lot of different ways I've come to learn and see my own grief, and realize that each one of my journeys is unique and different. And if we had time, I could go into each one of them and share how they're all very, very different, and how I've dealt with them and how they've affected me is very, very different. And with that, it's really come to help me see that that is true of all of us. We all have our own grief journeys that are unique, and no two people are grieving the same person. Even if they both lost a child, a husband and a wife are not grieving the same person. They each had their own unique relationship with them. They had their own unique personalities that they brought into that equation. And so that kind of is what brought me here. And through that, I've dug more and more into helping other people, and come to find that for me, helping others is really what has helped me grow through my grief journey.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like to say that our life work became our legacies for our lost loved ones. And I think that probably you can say the same. I mean, and I myself celebrate that, and I'm grateful for that every single day. Did you have any concluding thoughts before I offer mine for today's
Yeah, I
interview?
guess the biggest thing I would share with everyone is if a cruise is something that you've ever considered, I would highly encourage that this is a time for you to look at it. I would challenge that probably most of your fears around the cruise are not going to come true, and most of your expectations will be far exceeded. And if you're willing to take the risk to go on it, I think you'll find it's something you want to come back on. It amazes me how many people we've got coming back over and over and over again because they're finding just that's exactly what it is. So that's what I would share with everyone is take the risk to come with us.
Thank you so much. And just some final thoughts that I have for those of you who are listening to us today. Glenn and I have created the only formal grief conference that combines a stellar lineup of top grief experts from around the world and healing practitioners that is held on a cruise ship. So it's very unique what we're doing. There's nobody else doing the same exact thing that we are. And I would recommend that anyone who is grieving the loss of a loved one to death to consider joining us for the best grief conference that you can find. In addition to experiencing time with others on a beautiful ship, there really is something to be said about that. So I hope you seriously consider joining us in April of 2020, and all of our information can be found on our website at www.j3hhh. Thank you so much, Glenn. It was so wonderful talking to you today. Thank you.